Hey everybody, what's up? Jordan here. If you know me through Twitch, you probably know me as I'm Jerman. Today, we're not going to take a look at a deck like we usually do. We're actually going to talk about a broader concept and talk about how you should be testing to get better at Legends of Runeterra. Let's go. Let's go? I don't start like that. So thanks for coming back to this part of the video with that awkward introduction. Anyway, what you're going to see right here is the testing strategy document that I've written up. If you can't see it in this video, which you should be able to, but if you can't, that's okay. There's a link to the Google Doc down in the description below, along with a lot of other useful links. But what we're going to do today is we're actually going to walk through a memo that I wrote for some friends actually back in the day for the Eternal card game on how to test and how to get better and what they could have done to get ready for some tournaments. I've also adapted this and written this for Legends of the Five Rings, where I was trying to qualify for Worlds a couple of times. For Magic the Gathering, I've used it. So this document's kind of been used and repurposed, and you might even find a video or two on this channel about it. But I've adapted it for Legends of Runeterra, and I think it's going to be a really good guide for you, and I hope that if it's not too beginner, that it's useful. So let's jump right into it. So the most important thing when you're developing testing goals, everybody says, oh, I want to test this deck, I want to test this deck. And the big question that you have to get to is why. Like most things in life, I'm a very goal-oriented person. And in like most things in life, I think goals are the important thing you need to figure out before you do anything. And that's true with this testing guide and what your testing goals are for Legends of Runeterra. You have to figure out why I want to be testing. Is it because I want to 7-0 an expedition and I've never done that before? Is it because I want to hit Masters? Is it because I want to win one of the weekly tournaments that I find on Discord? Or is it simply that like I just want to win more and winning is fun? So I want to have more fun because losing sucks, right? Without testing goals, you're just kind of playing games and wasting time. If you're just saying, oh, I'm testing this deck, you probably have a broader question underneath that you're trying to answer, or a broader goal underneath. But it helps to articulate our goals ahead of time. That way we can focus on them while we're taking certain actions in the game. If I'm playing a different deck every time, but my goal is to focus on winning more and getting better, I don't know if my goal lines up with reality, right? And so that's a common theme we're going to see throughout this video, is that your goal is the centerpiece. It's the block of everything else that gets built on top. That's really important. Number 2 is develop a testing community. This seems kind of straightforward of like, oh, I just have ladder. But if you want to test and test seriously, maybe it's I want to win a tournament and I need to develop the best deck. Or maybe it's I just want to win more and I need to practice on ladder. You have testing communities that you can develop. You can find them on Reddit. You can find them on Twitter, Discord, Instagram. If the kids, do they TikTok? I don't know. But find people that have a similar goal to you and want to work towards those common goals. And with that, you can develop expectations. So if you're trying to win a lot of tournaments and become the next Korean Invitational champion, you're going to have very different expectations from your testing partners than a guy that just wants to get to platinum on the ladder, right? Both goals are equally valid to the right people, but the kid that just maybe wants to get the platinum this season is going to have a much different expectation of what is involved in testing than the guy that's trying to win a Korean Invitational. Having these laid out at the outset are very important. For example, I have friends that play Legends of Runeterra. They're not interested in remotely doing well. They log in every couple of days. They maybe do a quest and then they're out of there, right? I take this game much more seriously in that, like, I do this for content creation. I do this in my spare time for fun. Winning matters to me. So we don't really test or talk about the game much together because our goals are different and it really wouldn't be fun for either of us. And that's important. Number 3, the actual big picture testing procedure. I've broken this down into 5 steps. I guess this is sort of the meat and bones of the episode, so to speak. When someone says, how do I test? This is the thing that comes to mind. And again, this breaks down and starts at the beginning of goals. You have to have the thing that you're testing for in the forefront of your mind before you figure out how to test. So let's take the example of you're trying to hit Masters, right? Trying to hit Masters, set a certain date, like by the end of open beta, I want to hit Masters. I want to stop being hard D stuck D4 through D1, and I actually want to break into Masters so I can feel a little bit of self-validation. That might have been too specific. But jokes aside, take Masters, set a date by when you want to hit Masters. Or if you're trying to win your next week's Discord League tournament, go ahead and write that tournament on your calendar or wherever you keep your dates and go, this is my time that I want to have 3 decks ready for so I can comply with the format requirements. Or if it's I want a 7-0 in expedition, when do I want a 7-0 in expedition? And as the document here says, it gives a context to your testing. It says texting in the document, but hopefully I'll fix that by the time you guys see it. It gives a context to your testing, and it shows you the time frame for completing your goal. So you're not just like, well, I hope I get masters before the servers go offline, because that's not that helpful. The next thing you need to do is determine the meta decks. And now this is where we really start to get in the meat and the bones. We talked a lot about goals, but what's next, right? Okay, Jordan, you've got the goals. What do I need to do? It's determine the meta decks is the first step. These are the things that are going to be most popular. You're going to play them a million times on ladder. You're going to play them a million times in your tournaments. You're going to run into them, and it's dumb to not think about them. Figure out the meta decks and what you should be like preparing for and testing for. You need to use resources like Legends of Runeterra, tournament results, Discord, content creators tier lists like Swimstrom. On his website, swimstrom.com, has a fantastic tier list that he updates. I think he's crazy and updates it like every day. So you can always get a good idea of what some top-end content creators are thinking about the meta, and you should get an idea that, okay, he has the Bannerman deck, number 1 on the ladder. I need to make sure that my deck can beat the Bannerman deck. And in a brand new meta, like new cards are about to come out, right? A lot of new cards just got spoiled. It's going to be kind of your best guess on how to attack the meta or what meta decks are there going to be. Now, when you have dedicated content creators in a community, like we're lucky enough to have in Legends of Runeterra, you're actually going to be really lucky because these meta decks will get posted very quickly and you're not going to be in the dark for long. So after you have your meta decks defined, the next thing you need to do is brainstorm, develop and identify decks to either improve the meta decks that exist or develop decks that beat the meta decks. And these are 2 different ideas. So Bannerman and Elusives are 2 decks that have been here for forever. So if you're playing as, hey, I want to beat the Bannerman deck, well, you either need to make the Bannerman deck better so that it beats the mirror match, or you need to develop a deck that beats Bannerman on its own. Is a completely different idea, like the Frostbite decks, right? Or the control decks. You need to test these brood or improved decks against the expected established meta decks. That's step 4, right? So we have the meta. We have the deck that we want to play that we think beats the meta deck or is better than the current meta deck. Now we need to battle them to see if our ideas are right. We're going to talk a lot about that. That's a big step. It's a big step, so we're going to talk more about that in a minute, but that's the next step, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to record your results, you're going to discuss your results, and you're going to tweak your deck list to continue improving. So let's take this example of I want to win my local weekly Discord tournament, right? I've established these 3 decks as the meta decks, and I want to play 3 decks that beat them. So I'm going to play these 3 decks against these 3 decks and see the results. Do my decks actually beat these decks, or do these decks not beat these decks and I actually just missed the mark? And if you have, that's okay. You just go back to the drawing board and try again. I say here on the testing guide in 3F that logic and reason should guide here. It's easy to get emotionally attached to a deck. Maybe you've built some sweet Teemo brew that puts 1,000,000 poisons in their deck if they don't ever do anything and let you attack with Teemo 1,000,000 times. And you go, no, this deck is a really good idea. It's really good when nothing happens in the game. But you have to take a step back and let your logic and reason dictate here. Unless, and this is just a side caveat, unless your goal is just to have a blast, and when you play that deck, you're having a blast. Because then, who the hell cares if it wins in really tight games if you're having fun when it goes off? Again, like, I'm going to keep coming back to goals, but logic and reason should dictate so far as your goals require them, I guess is a better way to put that. Step 4 is develop the micro-testing procedures. And I list this as its own thing because it's really important. I say micro-testing because these are the minutia that you'll go through goal to goal. Up here in the big picture, these are more of your macro testing, big steps that have little steps in them. These micro-testing procedures are individual game decisions that you're going to be making while you're testing. So for example, I say in the 4A, and I think this is a great way to put it, is that each game should be played with a specific goal in mind. We have our big picture goal of I want to win my tournament on Saturday, right? But this game that I'm going to play on ladder, or this game I'm going to play against my friend against the tested deck, what is my goal in playing this game? And I list a couple of examples, and there's probably a billion more, but like maybe I just want to gain familiarity with this deck. Maybe it's my first time playing Elusive somehow, and I just need to see how this deck functions. Maybe I need to figure out, is my deck favored in the matchup if I'm playing against a friend with a specific deck? Maybe I need to figure out what cards are important. Is this card good, and when is it good, and why is it good, and when is it bad? When do I want to mulligan it? Am I winning games because my deck's actually good, or am I winning games because my opponents aren't doing anything and there's no way that this stands up to an actual opponent? And then even more broadly, is this thing that I've built good? Maybe I just have a bad deck. I've built a billion bad decks in Runeterra. And then the big question that I ask all of the time is, why should I be playing my deck versus a meta deck? And the reason I say that is because of content creators, because of Twitch, because of the internet. It is so easy for metas to quickly develop. Swim is going to find out what decks are good and what decks are bad way before you and I will, right? And so the reason that you have to really think seriously about playing your deck versus an established meta deck is, why isn't someone that's really good at this game or spends more time than I do playing this deck? And maybe you have an answer to that question, and that's hopefully what you're testing finds. But that is a question you should be continually asking yourself is, okay, I'm making this decision consciously. And that's the big thing here, making sure we're making decisions consciously. When we're testing, we need to remember point number 5, conception decks versus meta decks. Meta decks are, again, those well-established decks. You're going to find them on tier lists. People are going to talk about them. I'm going to review them on this channel every week on Thursdays. The biggest strength of playing a meta deck, right, is you know your deck's good. The biggest weakness, though, is that everybody knows your deck's good, and they're going to come to beat it. Just like we talked about, we're going to be talking about how to beat these decks when we're testing. Everybody else is going to do that too. They're not crazy. Conception decks are the brews of the format. They're your sweet poison Teemo deck that's going to go off, and you think it has a great matchup against Bannermen, right? The pros of these is nobody sees them coming. They're often finely tuned to specific meta decks, and they allow you to spike a tournament out of absolutely nowhere. I had to look down my notes for that one. Ugh. They can just sweep a tournament because no one's expected for them. The weaknesses about those is maybe you're just wrong on your guess of the meta. Maybe you think the meta decks are going to be A, B, and C, but actually decks D, E, and F show up, and your deck doesn't line up against D, E, and F very well at all. Or maybe your deck's just bad and you misjudged it, and that's going to happen from time to time. And then this last point that I have on here is more of a testing note for you and your test groups that you develop, is that you need to make everybody play every seat in the matchup. Everybody should play their conception deck, and everybody should be required to play some meta deck. I've been in a lot of testing groups where people just bring their brews to the table and they go, okay, can I play my brew? Can I play my brew? Can I play my brew? And all of a sudden it's people playing brews against brews, bros against bros, brews against brews. And they don't actually ever test against meta decks, and you get this inbred testing circle that's not any good. So players should both play the deck that they want to play in the tournament if it's a conception deck, and play an established brew deck, or an established meta deck, against each other. That way everybody takes a turn testing their fun deck, and everybody takes a turn testing the serious deck that they're trying to beat. Now, if you're like me, you just like playing the meta deck most of the time because time's a limited resource and it's easier to just grind a meta deck. So you're that guy in that seat. You're just like, I'll just play the meta deck against your brew all day, man. Like, I don't really care. But it's also important for the player in the meta deck seat to also play against other meta decks. That's important for them too. Step 6 here is track your data. We will never play enough games of a card game to have a meaningful sample size for actual statistics. There are way too many variables that go into a card game, but it is still important for you to track your data, your thoughts, feelings, and reactions about a deck. You're not a robot. You're a human being that has feelings, thoughts, and a real brain inside your head. You can make logical conclusions about, well, man, like this Avalanche was really good in the games I played it, but it's only because my opponent played 10 spiders into 4 mana and then passed. You can say, oh, well, this card's dead against Bannermen, and that's an anticipated meta deck, and this Avalanche was maybe really only good against my friend's brews. These data notes and, oh, this card was bad and this card was good, are helpful, even though there's not a statistical analysis to back them up. And I think that's important. I think that you should track this data. That way you have some form of progression as you go through your testing. Hey, that's it for this testing guide this week. I hope you found this useful at all. If you have any other tips, tricks, and things for testing, please comment them down below. Hit subscribe, the bell button. If you want to talk more about testing or see some of my testing in action, I'll be on Twitch every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday from 7 until 10 p.m. Eastern. There's a link to that in the description below. I really like the concept of talking about testing. I like talking about it in theory more than I actually like doing it, because it's such a overstated thing in card games. Oh, I'm testing for this tournament this weekend. Oh, I'm testing for this tournament this weekend. And we never actually think about what testing means. So I think that's really important, and I really hope that I help facilitate the discussion a little bit. But anyway, until next week, I hope you have a great time. Bye.